Welcome to Torah Today Ministries and our continuing series, Tehillim Talks, our studies in the Psalms. And in this episode, we'll be looking into the short psalm, Psalm 48, a love song for Jerusalem. But before we go any further, you're probably distracted by what's over my right shoulder. Well, we're always looking for ways to enhance our set for these videos, and my young friend Gabe Balzano made, as you can recognize, a scale model of Noah's Ark, complete with flag and anti-aircraft guns for those pesky pterodactyls that might come in for an attack. So thank you, Gabe, for this. I promised you I'd keep it on the set here for the next video, and there it is. So let's get right into our study. I'm going to spend a little more time on the introduction to this psalm than in the body of the psalm itself. The psalm is pretty self-explanatory. It's very familiar. A wonderful, beautiful psalm, and I've heard it sung many times in congregations and fellowships over the years. But Psalm 48 is the psalm of the day for Monday, the second day of the week. Now, you may not be aware that for each day of the week there is an assigned psalm, and in the daily prayers, that psalm is read and prayed. For Monday, Psalm 48. The question is, why this psalm, this love song for Jerusalem, why is it sung on a Monday? Because Monday, after all, is sometimes called the day of division. It was on the second day of the week in the creation that God divided the waters above from the waters below. He created the firmament by this division. It's the only day of the 6 upon which God did not say, "It is good." Now, we know that everything he did was good, but he just didn't say it was good on Monday. Now, on the third day, on Tuesday, he said, "It is good" 2 times. It's a doubly blessed day. But why is this division, this day of division, this day that God did not say it is good, why is the psalm of the day this love song for Jerusalem? Well, one of the reasons it's given is that Jerusalem is the place where division is healed. It's the place where God, who had to a degree separated himself from mankind, because of the sin Adam and Eve committed in the garden. It's where he decided to place his house, his temple, as he begins to invade the earth again, and is a place where that division between God and man is healed. Now, there are all kinds of steps leading up to the building of the temple, but the Temple Mount in Jerusalem is the place where God has placed his house. Now, right now, the temple does not exist, but it will be rebuilt. The prophets all tell us this. And God will once resume his place with man. Now, one of the interesting things about Jerusalem is its name, Yerushalayim. Now, the Yeru can sometimes be thought of as the city of, city. And we'll be seeing that word several times in our psalm. The city of Shalom, peace. But there's actually a better explanation for its name. It's not city of peace, but it comes from these 2 passages in Genesis. The first passage is in Genesis 14, verse 18, in which Abraham comes back from the War of the Kings. He comes to the Kidron Valley, the area right there at the foot of the Temple Mount, and he meets Melchizedek. And it says, and Melchizedek was king of Shalem. Shalem. If it sounds like shalom, you're right. Shalom, the word for peace, has at its root the word that means completeness, the place of perfection and completeness. Because peace in Hebraic thought does not come from the absence of conflict, but by something being brought to completion. And then things are at peace. It's like when an artist is creating a work, there's a lot of busyness. But once the work is finished, when it's complete, the artist can sit back and relax and enjoy the product of his hands. So, Shalem means completeness and means peace. But then later in Genesis 22, God tells Abraham to take his only begotten son, Isaac, up to the top of the mountain, which is the same place, Mount Moriah, which is the Temple Mount. And he's to offer him up there to God. And you know the story quite well. And at the end of it, when the angel speaks and reveals the ram that's caught in the thicket, the ram is offered in place of Isaac. And then this is what it says in verse 14. So Abraham called the name of that place Adonai Yireh, as it is said to this day, on the mount Adonai will be seen. Yireh means will be seen. And what happened on that mount many years later, almost 1,500 years later? Messiah appeared, and he was on that mount, and he was crucified up in that area. And God's presence, God's offering of his own son was seen. So we take these two words, Yireh, it comes from the story about how Abraham said, on the mountain Adonai will be seen. And then the word Shalem, which comes from the king of righteousness, Melchizedek, who was the king of Shalem, king of Shalom. And you put these two together, Yireh and Shalem, and you get the name Yerushalayim. So, you see the division that is being healed here. God, who is absent, or at least not seen, is seen. And then we see the king of righteousness, Melchizedek, and Abraham coming together and having bread and wine together, and Abraham paying 1/10 of everything he has to Melchizedek. And you always pay, the one who's lower pays tithes to the one who is higher. It pays this tribute to the one who is greater. So Abraham, in all of his greatness, sees Melchizedek, the king of righteousness, the king of Shalem, as being greater than him. And who is Melchizedek? Well, if you know anything about Hebrews, you know that Melchizedek is this amazing picture of Messiah himself. So in both of these words, we see pictures of Messiah. So I'm going to leave that to you to explore more. Hopefully I've given you enough to where you can begin to explore it further. But Psalm 48, this love song for Jerusalem, is the song of the day for the second day of the week, which is Monday. Now, if you wonder what the other psalms of the day are, you can get the notes on their website, and right at the end I have the psalm of the day for each of the days of the week. So let's dive right into our study. After that long introduction, this will go fairly quickly. This is a psalm of the sons of Korah, and we have one more psalm written by the sons of Korah, Psalm 49. And these familiar words, great is Adonai and greatly to be praised in the town of our God. That might seem strange because I know you've always heard it said, the city of our God. But there are two different words being used here through this psalm. There is the word Ir, which can be a town, and sometimes they say even like a fourth of a town. And there's the word city, Kiryah. And you'll see both of these words being used. And honestly, if you want to translate them both city, you can. But some translators point out that an Ir is often smaller than a Kiryah. But I'm not going to split hairs over it. So if you want to change town to city, please be my guest. Go right ahead. It's a little vague as exactly the best way to translate these two words is to bring out their difference. So great is Adonai, and greatly to be praised in the town or the city of our God. His holy mountain, beautiful in elevation, is the joy of all the earth. Mount Zion in the far north, the city of the great King. Now that phrase, the far north, is the word that means the thigh of the north. Thigh, like in a man's thigh. And what this expression really means is that it's the focal point. The focal point. If you've ever seen a copy of Leonardo da Vinci's Vitruvian Man, I'm sure you've seen it. It shows a man with his arms outstretched, and he's standing inside of a circle. And Da Vinci is showing by this the proportions of man's limbs, but at the focal point of the circle, at the very center, you'll see the man's loins and his thigh. And that is what is said here. It's the thigh of Zaphona. That's one of the words for north, which also means hidden. So in the far north, the city of the great king. Within her citadels, God has made himself known as a fortress. Now, this is interesting. We think of the citadels as being the fortress, but it says here, God has made himself known as a fortress. Some of the commentators point out that as long as the inhabitants of Jerusalem saw God as their protector, their walls and their towers stood, their fortresses stood strong. But when they began to forget God and look at their walls as being their fortress and their protection, those walls fell. So though it may look to the eyes of others that our strength comes in our abilities and in our intellect and whatever other things we have, we must always remember that God is our source, God is our protector, he is our provider, and if we focus on that and keep that always in mind, we'll find our hands able to do what we need to do. We'll find our minds to be clear, to think and to ponder the things we need to think about. And we'll find everything we need to accomplish what he wants for us in our lives. But we must always remember that it is God himself who is providing and flowing through us and inhabiting us. And he is the beer, we are the being, and he is being through us. He's the singer, we're the song. And the moment we begin to forget that, the moment all of this begins to crumble away, and we find ourselves incomplete and unable to accomplish his purposes. So, within her citadels, and they had citadels, they had walls, God has made himself known as fortress. It's faith in him that makes the wall strong. For behold, the kings assembled. They came on together. When they saw it, they were astounded. They were in panic. They took to flight. Trembling took hold of them there. Anguish as of a woman in labor, like an eastern wind that shatters the ships of Tarshish. Now, the rabbis have tried to pinpoint this as to the exact event that is being described. And so they looked at the past, and some of them think, well, this is the attack of Babylon when they came against, or I should say Assyria, when they came against Jerusalem and they were repelled. But other rabbis say, no, this doesn't describe any particular historical event, but it's actually prophetic of the coming war with Gog and Magog and the future attacks that will come against the city. So I tend towards the latter translation of this, the latter interpretation of this, rather. I think this has in view, though there were times attacks came against Jerusalem and the attackers were repelled, I think this is really looking to something in the future. And it's not at all uncommon in Hebrew and in Greek when you have Hebrew thinkers doing the writing, to provide, to describe future events in the past tense. To describe future events in the past tense. So you could actually go through this, if I'm correct, that you could read this in this way, starting with verse 4. For behold, the kings assemble. They come on together. But when they see it, they are astounded. They are in panic. They take to flight. Trembling takes hold of them there. Anguish as of a woman in labor, like an eastern wind that shatters the ships of Tarshish. It's almost like the Red Sea in reverse. Instead of the waters parting to be on dry land, it's like the armies come on dry land and the waters come crashing and destroy the army. As we have heard, so have we seen. Now, I have this in red because there's a very profound principle in these words. In Hebrew, it's kasher shemoni, we have heard, ken ra'ini, so we have seen, or as we hear, so we see. We tend to think that seeing is believing, but in the scriptures and the scriptural principles, believing is seeing. I always think of that phrase in the scriptures where it says, taste and see. Taste and see that Adonai is good. You know, I don't want to put anything in my mouth until I've had a good look at it. When someone says, close your eyes, open your mouth, it's like, no way. But the scriptures say, no, you have to taste first before you can see. You have to take it in. You have to believe it and trust it, that what I'm giving you is good. And when you take it in, then and only then can you truly see. I often say that physical light comes in through the eyeballs, but spiritual light comes in through the ears, for faith comes by hearing. So as we hear, so we see. So the question is, how good are you at hearing? How good are you at truly hearing what God is saying? And that word shemanu, from the word shema, hear, that word is also the word for obey. So we could also think of it in this way. As we hear and obey, so we see. So let's focus on trusting what God says, acting upon it, and then see if your vision becomes sharper and more focused, and that your awareness of Him becomes much clearer and much more immediate in your experience. Anyways, as we have heard, so have we seen in the town of Adonai of hosts, in the town, here I just put city so you can take it either way, but it's the same word is used here, the word ir. In the city of our God, which God will establish forever. I know there are certain cult leaders and others who say that God is done with Jerusalem. It's wiped away, and and though you may see some building there now, it has no real historical permanent standing in the future. Well, that's nonsense. Jerusalem is the city of our great God, always will be, and God will establish it forever. And then the final verses of our psalm. Verse 10, we have thought on your steadfast love. And that word for steadfast love is the word chesed, one of my favorite Hebrew words, chesed. O God, in the midst of your temple, as your name, O God, so your praise reaches to the ends of the earth. And this is something that's happening now, but will happen to an even greater degree in the future. That God's name will be heard throughout the earth, and from the ends of the earth, praises will come to Him. Now, as I read this psalm, there's a passage in Isaiah that I think it's important for us to be aware of, and I recommend that you study it together with this psalm. It's Isaiah 56, verses 6 and 7. And the prophet says, and the foreigners who join themselves to Adonai to minister to Him, to love the name of Adonai, and to be His servants, everyone who keeps the Sabbath and does not profane it, and holds fast my covenant, these I will bring to my holy mountain, and make them joyful in my house of prayer. Their burnt offerings and their sacrifices will be accepted on my altar, for my house shall be called a house of prayer for all peoples. There are some people who suggest that these foreigners are actually converts to Judaism. But I think the passage itself shows that that is not the case, because His house is a house of prayer for all peoples, for all the peoples. If they're converts, they're not called the peoples anymore. They're called Jews. But here God is saying that His house will be a house of prayer for all peoples, all the Gentiles of the world. And they'll come, they'll know his name, they'll call on his name, they'll praise him, they'll serve him, bring their sacrifices there. So anyways, going back to our psalm. Let Mount Zion be glad. Let the daughters of Judah rejoice because of your judgment. When you see something like daughters of Judah or daughters of Jerusalem, it can refer to the girls, the ladies, the virgins in the area. But daughters of Judah can also refer to the small towns around Jerusalem, the small towns in Judah. Since the major city, Ir is a feminine word, city is a feminine word, then the little towns around the outside are also feminine. So they're called daughters of the big town, the big city. So let the daughters of Judah rejoice because of your judgments. Walk about Zion, go around her, number her towers, consider well her ramparts, go through her citadels, that you may tell the next generation. At next generation, some rabbis translate that the last generation. That this is God, our God, forever and ever. He will guide us beyond death. Beyond death is almut in Hebrew, and some translators wrestle with this because it depends on whether you interpret it as two words, as it appears, or put together almut as one word. And so they wrestle with exactly what this means. But I think almut, upon death or beyond death, is the best literal translation. He will guide us beyond death. But the question is, why are we told to walk about Zion, number her towers, consider her ramparts, go through her citadels, so that you'll tell the next generation? I'm not quite sure what these instructions are all about. Jerusalem is a beautiful city, if you've ever been there, especially from the inside as you walk around. But the beauty I find as I walk there is that in every step, I experience the history and the flavor. It's almost as if you could say it's haunted by the Holy Ghost. It's haunted by a spirit of holiness. And somehow when you are there, you're looking at the stones, you're looking at the streets, you're looking at the towers, you're looking at the houses. But as you go through there, somehow you feel as if you experience a particular closeness to God Himself. So though my eyes fall upon the stones, somehow the eyes of my spirit fall upon God Himself and His faithfulness, because there's no logical reason under the sun why this city should even still be existing. But God promised from the earliest days that it would exist. And Abraham said, on the mountain God will be seen. And though it has been attacked and often destroyed and greatly damaged, and though it does not have a temple standing on the Temple Mount at this moment, Jerusalem just keeps on going. And we know that it is the city of the great King. And we have sufficient promises in the prophets that Messiah will return to the Mount of Olives on the east. He will make his way victoriously into his city. And so when you look at the stones, somehow I see God in His program. So that's what it means to me when I read these verses. Let me know what they mean to you. And so until next time in Psalm 49, I wish you shalom and may God bless.
Thank you for joining us for today's teaching. If the work of Torah Today Ministries has touched your life, please consider making a donation or sponsoring an upcoming video. As a video sponsor, you'll have an exclusive opportunity to memorialize a family member, celebrate a special event, or simply support the ongoing creation of similar content. Your tax-deductible contribution helps ensure that our teachings continue to reach all who are longing for truth. Click the link or visit our website to learn more.
We have to obey God. You don't have to stress yourself on accidentally. You do not write yourself indignantly. You not destroy your Bibles or your sons or your daughters.